So here's one way that I'm going to suggest that we tackle this today. We're going to talk about 4 basic burnout types that I have created based on 2 things. One, things that you and other people have told me about, like what comes up for them when they make reasons for themselves why they shouldn't take care of themselves. So when, or like, you know, what comes up for them when that happens. So it's from that. And it's roughly based on the 4 stress response types, which I mentioned earlier. Those are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Those are basic stress responses. Those are not bad. Those are our body's way of taking care of us when we're in stress or threatened in traumatic situations. So those are really useful. The challenge is that we often get, because our daily lives in modern living are so stressful, we get stuck in these stress responses more often than we would like to be, I think. So this is the first one. This is the achievement addict. This is the one I most closely align with, I think, most of the time. And again, I think most of us could be all of these by the PS. I think we can probably be all of these in different situations under various circumstances, but I think we probably lean into 1 or 2 of them more than others. So the achievement addict, you fight through stressful times like a warrior, even when you have nothing left. Like you have nothing left in the tank and you're going to keep powering through. You're a power thrower. And then so what are some of the things that will run through an achievement addict's mind? These are just some examples. So what can I do now? So the question is never, oh, I have an open moment. Maybe I'll take a time to rest, take a moment to rest. It's always like, oh, I have 15 minutes. What can I get done now? Blah, 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 and you're running like crazy. Even if you really can't get anything done in those 15 minutes, it's so silly. So then this sense that I'm the only one who can do this. There's no one else who could possibly do what I do. Like I got to do it. Or you will get, oh no, there's some terrible thing, fill in the blank with whatever that is, will happen if I don't do this. Right? So what are some ways that you replenish? If you're in this type, what are some of the ways that sort of you build your fire up? You might get hobbies that give you that sense of accomplishment. So this is a way of tricking yourself into self-care. Like what are like some hobby, I don't know what, it can be a million different things, but what like gives you a sense of accomplishment and you feel like you need to get it done. For years, I did this by training for races. Like, I didn't know I was doing this exactly. I sort of did, but like, if you're training for a half marathon, you have to put the miles in. And that's going to not be, at least for me, not going to be my normal work. So now if you're a professional marathon runner, that's a whole different thing. That's your job, which makes it, I wonder what they have to do to trick themselves into resting. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. Engage in spiritual practices that train your body to rest and relax. Experiment with teaching others. Like, what does that feel like to teach others to take on work you'd normally do yourself? What would that be like? And so for the achievement addict, the being on defiant lane might look something like this. It's letting go of perfectionism, allow others to do work that you could do, even if it's not the same way you would do it. Have significant interests that give you a sense of value and accomplishment outside of your work. And know that you are wonderful, even if you don't accomplish anything today. Even if that's the case, probably isn't, but you're wonderful no matter what. So I said, this is the second type, the reliably unreliable. So again, this is flight. This is roughly associated with fleeing. So this is like fleeing, the instinct to flee from danger. That's where our bodies respond in certain kinds of stress or threats. So the reliably unreliable will say yes to almost everything and then cancel or fail to show up. And so what they might be thinking is like, ooh, that's such a unique opportunity. I have to say yes. Or they'll say, yes, I will do that. And then they notice later that they have 2 other things on their calendar at the same time. And then either cancel on 2 of those things or not show up because they realize it too late and they're like, oh, well, I can't be 3 places at once. So I guess I'll do none of it or just do some of it, right? Or they say, I'm too tired. I really need to just stay home tonight. Very last minute. And again, bail on maybe what they had already said they were going to do. So how do we counter this if we're in this mindset? You might create a standard response you use when you get a request to do something. So you might say, instead of automatically saying yes, you might say, let me check on my calendar and get back to you. And then you would have to develop some kind of system for yourself to remind yourself to get back to that. And that'll vary from person to person. You might select a priority project for the week and work to stick to it. You might schedule in significant breaks full of activities and people you enjoy so that you don't hit the exhaustion wall. So before you get to that, oh, I'm just too tired, I can't do anymore, schedule in breaks automatically as part of your calendar, which is something we do when I tell you to, at least when I invite you to do a calendar, I usually say, hey, why don't you schedule yourself stuff first? Put that on your calendar before the other things so that you know it's there. So with this type, let go of FOMO, or the fear of missing out. Focus on one priority project at a time, schedule enough time off on your calendar so that you don't hit that wall. And know you are wonderful even if you say no to something. Saying no is okay. So our next type is routine rejector. And this is, again, loosely associated with freezing. So that's a self-defense mechanism, like you freeze, and so like it's sort of freezing or pretending you're dead. Like that's sort of like just pretend and you stop. That's the stress response. That's like sort of our basic stress response. For the routine rejector, I think this is sort of the way I've seen it manifest anyway. And again, I'm happy to have feedback when we start chatting a little. You have trouble making choices and setting a schedule because everything seems important and interesting. So you don't. You freeze up, have trouble making choices. So what might be the tapes you play in your head if you're a routine rejector? Like, ooh, all of those things sound really good. I don't know what to do first. And so then maybe not doing anything. None of those things get done. I want to be flexible and not tied down to a schedule. That might be one of the mindsets or one of the things that come up. Or too much structure limits my creativity. That might be something that comes up. What do you do about it? Clarify your values, i.e., what matters most to you. You might make a to-do list for each day and a to-don't list. Like, what are the things you're laying off of today? Like, you're going to work on them a different day. What are you going to do? Like, set that aside. And then schedule open time for whatever creative project you feel like doing. Or maybe that's setting time for a class that you want to go to because it would be simply fun and enjoyable. So schedule open time for yourself so that you feel like you have, that you're not tied down to a really rigid schedule. So that goes along with the setting time aside for yourself first. That you make sure with this setting time aside for doing sort of what creative thing or interesting thing might come along. And then finally, or rather with this type, let go of shiny new thing syndrome. The next new thing is not always the best or more important than the thing you're working on. Ground yourself in a clear sense of purpose and priority and live into it. And know that you are wonderful, even if you aren't always doing the absolute best thing. You're wonderful anyway. It's great. Finally, perpetual pleasers, which are roughly associated with fawning. Fawning is that instinct that we have to please other people in order to diffuse stress. And so you need to be needed. So you need to do everything for everyone except yourself. You're the last. This happens with most of these types, but especially with the pleasers. Like you're the last person on the list. So what are the tapes you play in your head? Oh, I scheduled for time for myself today. Oh, wait, someone else needs something. So someone else needing something will always trump what you set time aside for yourself for. So if they're asking me for this, they must really need me. Oh, yes, I'll do it. Again, that need to be needed. And what would happen to this poor person, whoever's asking me to do something, if I didn't do like X, fill in the blank for them? What would happen if I didn't do that? So what do you do instead? Find an accountability partner or schedule classes or things like that for self-care activities. Because if you're feeling like you're doing it for another person, you might trick yourself into actually doing it, right? That's what that works for a lot of us. It's an accountability thing, or the simple pleasure of being around other people in some cases. Like it gets you to do all manner of things if there are people you like involved. So teach someone else how to do something that you would normally do, and notice the satisfaction you get from that. You're a people pleaser. People are usually pretty excited when they learn new things. So use that as a way. So even though they might be frustrated at first, you're going to see them be less frustrated and more empowered over time. So maybe that will give you that sense of making them happy, even if like for a minute they're not, right? Like for a little bit of time, they may not. In the long run, they might actually be happier and feel better about themselves in the long run. And then finally, agree to do something for others only when you don't feel resentment about it. Because that resentment can bottle up, and the resentment is usually telling you that you need time for yourself most often. Whew, that's a lot. I gave you a lot. Hopefully the guidebook helped. And you filled in your little blanks if that's useful. Oh, so wait, I keep forgetting this last part. So this is what defiant lane looks like for the pleasers. Let go of the need to be needed. Do things for the joy of it rather than because they make you feel better about yourself. And you are wonderful even if you don't do everything for everyone and you do some things for yourself. You're pretty great, even if that happens. So this is the time when we're turning to our reflection part. So I've given you the overview about these 4 types. And again, I'm pretty sure all of us lean into these things occasionally, right? But I'm wondering if one of those resonated with you a little bit more than some others. So pick one, or pick one at random, or do this activity without, setting aside the types. That's just an entryway into having this conversation, honestly. So in this reflection, I would invite you to take a few moments to brainstorm on that side. So on the left-hand side of the grid, I think that's your left-hand side. Okay, whatever. The side under the little cloud. The side under the cloud, brainstorm all of the thought processes you have. I gave you some ideas of those. What are the tapes you most often play in your head? When you could be taking care of yourself and then you don't. So what are the tapes that get played when you abandon that thing you're going to do for yourself, or you don't schedule it in the first place? So what are the tapes you play in your head? So brainstorm those. I'll give you a few minutes for that. And you can go ahead and do these both if you want at the same time, or I'll direct you to go on to the second half if you want to do it that way. What are some of those like antidotes or those things that will help counter that mental mindset that mindset that keeps you from taking care of yourself. What do you need to do to counter it?